So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I would welcome you warmly to the WWEA webinar. This is the 12th WWEA webinar, and welcome to this webinar, which is again the second webinar in a series of our half-year reviews of the world markets for wind power. This session is dedicated to Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and African countries. We had the webinar on Asia and Australia last week. Reason for that is, on the one hand, that we have so many countries that it's too much to do all of them in one webinar. And the second is, of course, the time difference, because what is already late for the Eastern Hemisphere is too early for Western Hemisphere. So I'm again happy to have an excellent panel of speakers here with us. You will hear first-hand information from some of the important markets. We have chosen some markets which are, some of them which are not sometimes in the focus of attention, but still important to understand what the impact of what the current developments are, and also what the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic crisis is that is still ongoing. We heard from Asia and Australia that the corona situation there has an impact. It leads to delay, but that's just a short-term impact, and that in the long term, all our speakers were very confident that actually wind power deployment will be accelerated. So let's hear what our speakers today have to say. Let me inform you about some group rules. I would request everyone to stay muted until you're requested to speak. Of course, the speakers primarily. If we have time for questions and answers, you're also, of course, then will be called to speak. For questions, we also have the chat here, where you can post your questions if you like. Also address the person you would like to answer that question, and we will try to address all questions. Let me also mention that this is a public webinar. We, of course, will record the webinar here, so we will make the recordings available after the webinar. And we also have a live stream on YouTube in parallel with this webinar. So it's not only the people that are joining us here, but we will have additional viewers outside the group that you can see here. Thanks a lot to everyone already now who has been or will contribute to making this webinar an interesting webinar, in particular to our partner, Profec Ventus. And let me mention that, as you know, we offer these webinars for free. Those of you who like to be part of the webinars, please contact us. Those of you who want to support our work, always happy to welcome new members for the World Wind Energy Association. And we have also for companies a range of sponsorship options to give them visibility. With this, I'm very happy to welcome our first speaker. And well, we have in general, the order is that we go from north to the south. We have some exemptions because some of our speakers have other commitments today. Now it's my pleasure to invite Davide Astiazo Garcia from the Italian Wind Energy Association. And yeah, Italy is, of course, one of the big markets in Europe, also on a global scale. And I'm very happy to have you, Davide, here presenting us the status of wind power in Italy. I think I can already mention that Italy, which will also be co-hosting with us our major event in some time to come. Davide, I'm happy to have you here with us. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Stefan, for your kind words. And yeah, I'm happy to try in about 10 minutes to present the situation, the current situation in Italy about wind energy development. And yes, I'm the Secretary General of the Italian Wind Energy Association. I prepared some few slides, maybe with some numbers that could be interested for the audience. I try to share my screen. Okay. So I think that the starting point is, of course, for Italy, but for all the other member states, the targets our governments defined in the National Energy and Climate Plan for 2030 and for the middle steps. Of course, this is the situation for Italy as regard the electric renewables. As you can see, if the wind is together with photovoltaic technology are the two main technologies that should increase more than twice, 3 times for the PV, more or less twice for the wind, in order to reach our 2030 targets. As regards the wind in particular, we have now less than 11 gigawatt of installed wind power in our country. The targets are 19.3 gigawatts at 2030. So we have to add more or less 90% of the already installed power. The same or more as regard the electricity, the production from wind. We have now 17 terawatt hours more or less, a little more, and we have to reach 41 terawatt hours in 2030 only from wind powers. So this challenge could be achievable, could be win, of course, in two main considering the two main aspects: the new installations and the lifetime extension and repowering of existing wind farms. That is the key aspect of for our country. The middle step in 2025 is 15 gigawatt in Italy. So we have to remind not only the 2030 targets, but also the other ones in order to start working in the right direction. We have now tenders, auctions. We have multi-technology auction in Italy, wind and PV together. We just finished the fourth procedure of auction. Here are some numbers. Each procedures had an amount of about 500 to 700 megawatt for both technologies. The prices, these are the price of the first auction from the middle. The average values are about 67 euros per megawatt hour in Italy now. The lower one are about 25, 26, and the higher 68 euros per megawatt hour. The situation, the wind won mainly the first auction respect to the PV, because in Italy now there is a problem for this authorization procedures of PV plants in agricultural areas that will not could not allow the possibility of having many PV plants to participate in this auction. Anyway, in the last auction, we have seen that the number of megawatt that joined this auction was decreasing. So we have seen that there are not so many wind plants that already got the authorization and could participate in this auction. So this is one of the critical points that I will consider also in the last slide of my presentation. Of course, another possibility we are considering in Italy after the auction is the long-term power purchase agreements between the wind operators and the other counterparters. So we are working also with energy traders, operators, investors, legal offices, and so on to find the best ways and for obtaining these contracts that are still not so many in Italy, or very few. And we are also in contact with the local and national institutions for underline what are the economic and non-economic barriers for this kind of contracts, and estimating the real cost of a long-term PPA in our country. On the other side, we are working with the Italian Ministry of Economic Development in order to investigate the possibility to have another ministerial decree for new auction after the 2021, the last one that is foreseen in 2020, at the end of 2021. So a possibility that will continue with auction and tenders also for another couple of 3 years. We are asking also for 4 or 5 years in order to give a more extended vision to the operators and to the investors. Of course, in Italy, we did some study, and we can see that we have the wind, the availability of wind source for achieving the National Energy and Climate Plan targets. In this slide, we can see in orange the installed power, and in blue the potential power for each region. So we have we have room for new installations. As regard on the other side, the repowering, the lifetime extension, we can see in this data coming from Wind Europe that we have quite young wind asset in our country. But on the other side, we can see that most of this installed power are near the end of life. So we have to facilitate the authorization procedures for these wind farms. Some data here. We have more or less an average year of 10 years, and is getting older until 21 years in 2030. And the estimated repowering potential in our country in 2030 is around 4 gigawatt. So as you can see, we need both new and repowering from both sides. What are the key challenges for our countries as regard the possibility to achieve these targets? The first one is the permitting procedures, because we have seen that in Italy, the authorization procedures are still too long. We need up to 4 or 5 years to get the authorization, and it's not possible in this situation. It's not possible to keep this delay from the RED II decree, directive that underline that it should take around 1 or 2 years, so more than the double in Italy. And we are working very strictly with our governments in order to facilitate these permitting procedures. And we use also the new decrees that the Italian government emanate for the COVID-19 emergency in the last months. In particular, one decree called Simplification Decree that included some of our amendment we proposed to the government for starting from the first draft of the decree, but other ones has not been accepted by the Italian Parliament. So we are still in touch with them in order to try to put this new amendment in the future decrees or regulatory possibilities. One of the main win we had is the problem of spalma incentivi that did not allow the participation in auction for most of the Italian wind farms, and we solved it with this new decree. But we still have many works to do. Other challenges regards the grid development. Of course, it's unclear for the authorization of grid connection, and also we still have some retroactive change that is not is critical for mainly for investors that could have some doubts to invest in Italy compared to other countries. Last but not least, the burden sharing, the between state and regions is still a critical aspect, because we have many differences from a region to another one in our country, and the main problem is with the Ministry of Cultural Heritage, that is in Italy is divided into local superintendents of architectural heritage and the landscape, and this one have a big power locally, a big power to decide if the wind, the authorization procedures should be accepted or not, and they are very strictly in the last years. So we are working to facilitate the relationships with them, and of course the conclusions are coming back to my introduction. If in our country we want to achieve the targets that have not decided by ANEV, by us, but have been decided by the national government in accordance with the European directives I mentioned. So our government, our local and national institution should help the investors to really go to this direction, and mainly solving these problems of delay and authorization procedures. Of course, COVID-19 has been an emergency, but has been also an opportunity. Some of these opportunities have been accepted from in our country for as regard the wind farms. Of course, other ones are still under discussion, and I hope we can have good news soon from here to the end of 2020. On the other hand, my last point regards what we are doing for solving the health and safety problems in operation and maintenance in the wind energy sector in Italy, and we are working very strictly with many companies that are our members and have a very high expertise on these topics. So we are trying to facilitate the development of our sector without problems for the health and safety of the employees that works in the wind energy operation and maintenance procedures. Thank you very much. I think it's all from our country.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks a lot, Davide. I think that was indeed very interesting to hear from you. The results of the auctions that you're mentioning, interesting to see that obviously this is getting a pattern in some countries that they are undersubscribed. So there's obviously a few things that need to be fixed around that. That's something that I think we should watch and see and compare experience in the different parts of the world. And then if I may ask you directly now, you said that you are in permanent contact with your government regarding extending deadlines, etc., for wind farms installations. That implies that there will be some delays, although not less activities. Is that right?
Yes, we asked for some delay from postponing both the authorization procedures, both the auctions deadline, in order to facilitate the operators to be in line with the rules, but on the other hand, to have some more time according with the lockdown we had, and also the situation now is quite critical in our as in many other European states. So in that case, yes, we received many additional time, both for the auctions and both for presenting all the documents for the authorization. The problem is the time they need for answering, for saying yes or not for the authorization of the new wind farms.
Would you see any direct impact? Like our Chinese colleagues last week told us that although they will install more than ever before, but there are some challenges with supply chain, in particular international. He mentioned that there's some products that they get from Europe, for example, where they had some challenges to keep up with what they actually need. Do you have any such technical, rather technical impacts?
No, as far as we have seen, no, we managed I think we did a good work also with the operators, the technical parts of the wind sector, and we reached more or less the very high penetration during the lockdown in March and April. So I think it was like an experiment of what we'll have in the Green Deal in 2030, where we had to reach 20-25% of penetration, renewable penetration coming from renewables in the electric sector, because also the consumption has been decreased significantly in that in those months. So yeah, no, we didn't find many criticalities in this sector. Yes.
Good, thank you. Thank you. I think that was an excellent first presentation, which gives us already a good idea of what happens in one of the major markets. Now we move to the south. As I said, we wanted to go Europe and then Africa, but I'm very pleased we have one speaker from Africa, from Uganda, a country that has not yet been at our webinars before. I'm very pleased to have Bernard Mbaine. I hope I pronounce your name well. And you are heading the Wind Power Association of Uganda, a country which is in Eastern Africa. And Bernard, I have the pleasure now to hand over to you.
Yes, Stefan, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I want to be sure that you're hearing me very clearly.
Yes.
Okay, great. My name, as said, is Bernard Mbaine from Uganda, and I'm the chairman of the Wind Power Association of Uganda. Unlike most of the markets that you are used to, the Ugandan wind energy market is a very new market, and it's just emerging. So, but I will share some few slides of mainly the status and what are the few developments that are taking place, and what could be the opportunities for the different players and developers that would like to come down to our market. So if you will allow me share my screen.
I think that should be possible if you click on that share screen button.
Yeah, let me just do that.
Looks good.
Okay. All right. I hope that we all can see it.
That looks, at least here on my side, looks very good.
Okay, thank you. So we'll look at the status of wind energy in general, but also focusing directly to wind energy. As I said, I'm the chairman of the Wind Power Association, but I also double as the vice chairman of the Uganda National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance in REA. I will briefly introduce what Wind Power Association is. So we are a non-profit making civil society organization founded in 2017 as a national platform, for the different stakeholders, but mainly to, promote and support the sustainable development of the wind power technology in Uganda. So we are also an active member of the Uganda National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Alliance, which is the national organization, that takes the different associations in the sector. So our action areas, our key action areas, are capacity building, creating awareness of wind technology in the country. We do coordination and representation of the different players in the sector, that is representing them at the national level, East African level, and the sort. So we also engage in policy and advocacy together with the government, to try and advise them on the new and upcoming policies, the desires of the different players in the sector. But finally, we also, look at environmental protection as a key aspect of renewable energy, and looking at the global trend of climate change. So looking at the whole renewable energy at large, before we drill down to the wind, our country has very small capacity, because our total installed capacity is just over 1.2 gigawatts, of course, which is very small, and 80% of this is from hydro power. But what we've seen is that in the past about 10 years, we've had several PV system connections. These are mainly rooftop connections, but we've also had about 50 megawatt of grid connected solar plants. These were the first ones. We have 3 10 megawatt plants, and then 1 20 megawatt plant, which is, I think, one of the biggest in the East African region. So we also note that biomass remains as one of the largely used energy source, especially in the rural areas. Of course, all these offer an opportunity for the expansion of the electricity to these rural areas. If you look at the graph on the right side, it shows the generation mix of electricity, where 80% is from the hydro, 8% thermal, then 4% from solar, and 7% cogeneration. So usually, personally, when I'm presenting this graph, I don't feel very happy, because we do not have any percentages from the wind energy. So that's the big question. But before we also go down to wind energy, maybe look a little bit at the regulatory structure of the Uganda's energy sector. So currently, the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development is the custodian of the whole energy sector. We also have the Electricity Regulatory Authority, which is the regulator of the whole energy sector, regulating generation, transmission, and distribution, sale, export, and import of energy. So then we have others like the Uganda Electricity Generation Company Limited, which is responsible for generation. But we note that generation is also open to private sector companies. Then we have the Uganda Electricity Transmission Company Limited that does the transmission of electricity. And then the Uganda Electricity Distribution Company Limited that is responsible for distribution. We also note that distribution is also open to private sector players. We have some private utility companies that have different territories that they are controlling. And then maybe also the other government bodies like the Rural Electrification Agency, which is mandated with the authority to do rural electrification, extend the electricity to the rural areas. The National Environment Authority, of course, that also comes in when it comes to licensing and giving permissions for these power generation projects. So I would like to look at the opportunity available. Firstly, in general, we'll note that Uganda has high potential for renewable energy. Over 2 gigawatt of large hydros. You have as potential for geothermal. You have high potential for biomass, and you have very high potential of about 6 kilowatt hours per meter squared per day of solar energy. But also in the recent past, now following the recent studies, you have about 6 to 7.5 meters per second, especially in the northeastern region of the country. As you see on the map, this is one of the maps that was published by the ministry. Not very accurate, but of course it indicates, you see the northeastern side in the far, top right. The pink color shows the highest potential region, the wind potential, where you can find it in Uganda. So we also look at the high target. We have about 17 gigawatts of target in the year 2028. But out of these 17 gigawatt targets that was set, we have generated less than 1.5 gigawatts. So there is still very big room for expansion, especially for the energy developers. It shows a very big opportunity in about $51 billion investments that are still, available. Of course, when you look at the opportunities, you also look at the high population growth that we have in the country. We estimate about 53 million of people by year 2028. And according to the national plan, if we will have attained a middle status income by that time, by 2028, it means that the need for electricity will quite be very high, about 20 gigawatts of electricity that will be required if the current population growth is maintained. Then the other big opportunity that you look at is that in Uganda currently only about 28% of the population has access to electricity. So the access to electricity is only about 28. So this means that you have over 70% of the population with no access to electricity. And when it comes to the rural areas, this percentage goes very high to about 90%. So this shows how much the wind energy and the other sources can come in, especially those that can be distributed sources of electricity, where you can extend to the villages. Of course, we know that there are challenges of grid extension, but looking at the distributed power sources, the mini grids that can be put up, it shows a very big opportunity for the different developers. So we'll look at wind energy a little bit more in specific. As I said before, wind energy is one of the least developed technologies in the country, with no grid projects currently, but of course there are those that are being proposed. And looking at what could be the challenges for this, because it's important to know what could be the issues that bring this about. So one of the things that we note is that there are relatively lower wind speeds as compared to maybe the other countries like Kenya. For example, in the map on the right, you will see some of the wind areas of the country in the northeastern part, as I had said. If you'd compare it with the other far right side, which is the Turkana side of Kenya, where you see the very dark colors, which indicate very high potential, you'll see that our speeds are a bit relatively low compared to maybe Kenya. So what this means is that in one way or the other, to make the projects very attractive, you may need either government intervention or some subsidies to be put in place to promote and make some of these projects very feasible.
Just
yes.
a short remark, because I think there is somehow I can see there's a box on part of your presentation. I don't know where this comes from.
Which one is this?
Usually doesn't disturb. Yeah, now it's gone.
Sorry about that. So I think it was okay. You can see it clearly now.
Yeah, there is a small box now just left, but I think you can see the map is now completely there. Thank you.
Okay. So this map, the further left, where you have the darkish color, is the Kenyan side, the Turkana, the famous Turkana region, which has one of the highest wind speeds, of course, in the African countries. But also you look at the circled area, which shows the wind areas of Uganda. The speeds are relatively low, but you have speeds of about between 6 to about 7.5 meters per second, which is of course good speed. But to increase on the attractiveness of these projects, on the viability of these projects, is you may need the government support to come in, and when it comes to maybe logistics, because logistics and then grid extension to evacuate the power, so that the project can become more attractive for the developers. So one other thing that we note is that the low awareness of the wind technology, as we said, unlike in the developed countries, wind energy is a new technology in Uganda. So you will find that there's a need to create more awareness for both the local people when it comes to acceptance of projects, for people to understand the projects better. So then they can be able to recognize and accept the projects. The other point is the mindset. So mindset is more of even in the government officials, even in the local people, that people used to think that Uganda doesn't have very high speeds, doesn't have good potential. So then this makes it less prioritized by the people. So everyone thinks very fast about solar, everyone thinks about hydro, or you find very few people are giving attention to the wind technology. Of course, the other point is prioritization by the government, which a bit relates to mindset. But currently, since when we started, the associations, interventions, and the different projects that are around, we've now started to pull efforts of the government to try and focus more on the wind technology and trying to show them that there's enough potential. Of course, some of you may know about the recent studies by IFC, which show very high potentials in Uganda also. Then one last point, which is also one key point that of course is common to other different countries, is grid integration challenges. Of course, looking at the nature of Uganda's grid, with only about 1.2 megawatts of installed gigawatts of installed capacity, it limits on how much wind energy you can integrate into the grid. So that is also one of the challenges. But of course, going forward, we see more and more large hydro projects that come onto the grid, which means that you increase the spinning reserve, so then you're able to integrate more wind energy onto the national grid. For example, we have an upcoming 600 megawatt project. So you know that when you have a 1.2 gigawatt grid and you add on a 0.6 gigawatt project, which is large hydro, so then you have a bigger gap to integrate more wind energy onto the system. So let's have a look at some of the few interventions that have been done in the recent past, because we note that in the recent 5 years, we've had a little more of interventions on wind energies. So number one is you looked at the government under the Ministry of Energy tried to pilot a wind study in one of the regions, the highest potential region, with some 2 wind measuring masts, which were of course the first ones in the country. And some of the indicative results from those masts, which were installed about 4 years ago, indicate speed of about 6 meters per second. But of course, due to lack of internal capacity on the side of the government, we were not able to get a conclusive report of the data from these masts that were installed. So I think the government is also working on improving their capacity, because as a new technology, it comes with a need to build the capacity of the local institutions, both the private and the government. So there's a need to improve on their capacity, and I believe the government is currently working on that. Another point that you'll have is that the government also piloted some microgrids in 2016, of course, very small scale turbines. So the aim was to try and see if wind energy can work out, if there is really potential. And these microgrids were put in some of the schools and communities, and they were benefiting schools and communities. And they were working, they are still working really very well. So that was one sign that the government is, is trying to prioritize wind, is trying to put efforts in developing the wind energy industry. So another one big project that we have seen is that in 2015, we got one developer, a Sri Lankan company, which expressed interest to develop a 20 megawatt project. So they started by installing 8 wind measuring masts to measure the wind in the high potential region, which is the northeastern region of the country. You'll see some of the pictures showing the wind measuring masts. And this was a very successful measurement campaign, and currently they have been permitted to do a pilot 20 megawatt wind farm. So this will be our first utility scale wind project, 20 megawatt in the northeastern region of the country. And they are currently doing the designing, and I think soon they will be starting the construction of the project, because they have all the green light already from the government side. They have all the necessary permissions for the project to move on. So we also got some wind resource map and a pilot project, which this program was funded by African Development Bank through the Ministry of Energy, and they had advertised a tender for wind resource mapping and establishment of a pilot wind farm. This project, I think, still had procurement challenges. They have not progressed to the next stage, but this also shows how much the government is focusing to improve and promote the wind technology in Uganda. Of course, looking at the policies that have been put in place, the current energy policy, which is under development by the Ministry of Energy, favors the development of wind energy. They have put priorities to try and develop the wind technology. Of course, one other aspect you look at is the government has piloted very many windmills in the past years in, of course, the high potential region, because you see that this high potential region is also one of the water stressed regions. So they used the wind water pumping system deployed in different areas to try and supply people with water for, domestic use. So all these interventions to try and utilize the available potential of wind in different ways show how much the government is committed to developing the wind industry. Of course, to our side, like the Wind Association, it shows, every small intervention that comes in shows us, the potential available and shows the people how much we can enhance from our available potential in the country to try and, overcome the issue of mindset, the issue of awareness, of course, as we also attract the large investments, the utility scale projects. So in the pictures, of course, you will see some of the small wind turbines that have been put in some of the different regions to do, of course, different activities, wind energy generation at household levels and domestic levels like that. So that is a bit of how the Ugandan industry has progressed when it comes to wind energy, and we are welcome to developers who would like to work with us and develop the country's wind energy resource that is available. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Bernard. That was an excellent presentation. And in particular, I appreciate that you showed us the full range of wind technology. Many people tend to only think about large grid-connected wind turbines. Of course, we also have a small wind section, but we also talk about wind pumps. So the full range which can benefit people need to be considered. I do appreciate that. And just as a question, I know that you do not have large wind farm yet in place, but there is obviously soon something will happen. Is the current corona pandemic having any impact on that?
The current corona, of course, usually when you do not have a lot of projects in the pipelines, you do not expect a lot of direct impact. But of course, indirectly, yes, because, for example, there are some projects that we're working on, for example, on financial closure, financial close within this area. So that means that there is a little bit of realignment by, for example, the international banks to where they want to put their funds. So that means you have some delay in closing some deals for such projects. Then also the live scenario is that recently, as approaching the government, we were trying to work on a capacity building with the government before the lockdown. But when the lockdown and the whole corona situation came, when I approached them again, they said, no, let's put capacity building on hold, because currently the country is looking at activities that can quickly revive the economy very fast. So that means some of those activities which may not be a very priority at that time are realigned and put on hold. So that is a bit of the impact that I can look at, mainly on the finance side, the finance that could come from the different partners. So yeah, that's where you have a lot of effect. But on groundwork and physical activities, because we do not have quite a lot, then you do not have a lot of impact. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Also, thank you for sharing this information with us. And I look forward to working with you. And I think you're one of the pioneers in the region, obviously. It's great to see then how Uganda can become the new wind power hub in Eastern Africa. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you.
Then I would, I don't see now yet a question. Maybe if there is a question, you can maybe answer that later. I see there's one question for Davide here. Davide, you're still with us, and there's a very focus question on what's the status of offshore wind in Italy, from Oliver from the German Export Promotion Agency. Davide, would you like briefly to respond to that?
Yeah, very quick. The national plan in Italy, target for offshore wind is 900 megawatt at 2030. Many operators are interested now and are presenting some projects. The main ones are one in Sardinia, one in Sicily, a couple in Emilia-Romagna in the Adriatic Sea. All of these projects are bigger than 200 megawatt each, and we are waiting for a new decree for the new renewables, including offshore wind. As far as we know, the offshore this decree will include, because it's still not published, they will include only 150 megawatt for offshore wind, but with a higher amount of euros per megawatt hour. So our idea is to decrease the price because we have room for decrease the price and implement the number of megawatt. And of course, we are speaking on floating offshore wind for our seas mainly.
Okay. Well, thank you for that additional information. And then I'd just like to welcome Peter Ray, our president, who is now with us here as well. Peter, maybe you can, at the end of the webinar, then make some concluding remarks. I would now come up with a poll. We did a survey already during the webinar last week, and I would request you to have a look at some of the questions and fill that out. How would you describe the current situation of the wind industry in your country? A brief poll. We invite everyone to join and answer whether you see it very positive, no difference compared to the pre-COVID-19 situation, negative or very negative. Yeah. In the meantime, I have the pleasure to announce our next speaker. Actually, there's one colleague from Switzerland who is busy with inaugurating a wind farm, so he may join us later. We will have his slides for sure presented at the end. Now our next speaker is Dr. Andrei Konechenko, who is the chairman of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association. Andrei is also vice president of WWA and taking care of the whole also CIS countries in our association. Andrei, I know you have a lot of work at this point of time in Ukraine, and we look forward to hearing from you the situation of wind power at this point of time. Before I hand over, let's have a brief look at what are the results of our first poll. And we can see here there is a slightly positive picture, but quite a few people also see a negative impact of the negative situation at this point of time. Yeah, then thanks for you who participated in the poll, and I hand over to Andrei.
Okay, dear friends, I am happy to welcome all of you today and appreciate the opportunity to present the recent wind power development in Ukraine. To begin with, I'd like to mention that the current year has become a year of survival and struggle of our market for its existence and further development. This is not only a matter of COVID-19 pandemic, which slowed the pace of wind project development, but also of political struggle between fossil and green energies. The sharp growth of renewable energy technologies in 2019 led to revision to the renewable energy legislation in 2020. I should be also noted that launching the new electricity market in July 2019 without resolving the perennial problems of Ukraine's power sector, gave birth to even more challenges. This first year of operational electricity market in Ukraine clearly demonstrated it. Well, let's have a look at the current wind power market in Ukraine. As of the first half of 2020, the total installed capacity of Ukraine's wind power sector reached 1,212 megawatt, excluding 226 megawatt located in the occupation territory of Donetsk and Lugansk region and annexed territory of Crimea. More specifically, 25 wind power plants, mainly with megawatt class wind turbines, successfully generate green electricity in Ukraine. The share of wind electricity in total Ukraine's electricity balance has reached 2.25%. According to our analysis, the total individuals involved directly or indirectly in the national wind power sector amount to nearly 1,300 persons, and 35% of which are women. Sorry, it's not working. I don't know. Okay. 2019 was a record year for Ukrainian wind power sector. 637 megawatt new wind capacities were added to the grid. In additional, 5,000 megawatt of new wind farms have already received construction permits. As of the end of 2019, investment in the national wind power sector reached nearly 2 billion euros. This slide shows wind capacity growth since 2010. I'd like to remind that feed-in tariff was introduced in Ukraine in April 2009. Columns representing years from 2015 are made in the three color. Blue color shows capacities installed in the mainland Ukraine, while red means capacities installed in the territory of the annexed Crimea, and orange color shows wind capacities installed in temporary occupied territory of Donetsk and Lugansk region of Ukraine. As you can see, this has been no wind development in this region since the year of their annexation of occupation by Russian Federation. By the end of 2020, we expect to have around 300 megawatt of new capacities. Initially, the figures were higher, but coronavirus pandemic modified it. In April 2020, several wind companies with wind energy projects being in active construction phase were notified by their constructor and subcontractor on force majeure event occurrence due to quarantine restriction caused by COVID-19. These circumstances led to some delay in wind project development. So, how does the renewable electricity market of Ukraine look like as of first half of 2020? This has been installed 5.7 gigawatt of solar plants. Share of soil in green electricity come to 58.4%. As for wind power, the figure for installed capacity are much more modest, only 1.2 gigawatt, while share of wind in green electricity generation come to almost 33%. As for the other type of renewable energy source, their share in installed capacity and electricity generation is insignificant. The repeat increase in renewable energy capacity in 2019 has revealed certain flaws in the support system design. First of all, very high tariff for solar electricity. Such tariff for solar projects unfunded, uncontrolled construction of solar farms in the country. For sure, it caused unbalancing functioning of national electricity market. Since January 2020, the renewable energy source market of Ukraine has been suffering from delay in payment, and since April 2020, from non-payments for electricity bills by the national off-taker. The non-payments crisis in the electricity market led to the long-term negotiations between investors and the government. As a result, a memorandum of understanding between government, the regulator, and two leading renewable energy associations, including our association, was signed in June 2020. And in July 2020, the parliament adopted a law which substantially reduced the feed-in tariffs for renewable electricity. For example, for wind farms commissioned between 2015 and 2020, feed-in tariff rates is reduced by 7.5%, and for wind farms commissioned from 1st January 2020 onwards by additional 2.5%. The law also set up the terms for payment of electricity debt. The debt shall be fully repaid by the end of 2021. Some changes were introduced to green auction system. Thus, the pilot auctions to be conducted still in 2020. The government made a firm commitment to our association to restore full payment for renewable energy producers in the very next months following the passage of the law, but payment discipline has not been established as was promised. The guarantee buyer has only covered its payment obligations for electricity delivered in August, and payments for September deliveries are now at just 27% of its obligations. Payment for 9 months electricity deliveries are at average 48% of its obligation. So, at the end, I may say that COVID-19 pandemic has affected the development of wind energy sector in Ukraine less than the current non-payment crisis in the sector. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Andrei. I think this is, on the one hand, what you show, the growth in Ukraine. That looks good, but what you're telling us about the problems that you have with payment is, of course, something that we understand is quite concerning development, and we will, of course, wish you that that can soon be overcome, so that that the market, which used to be an attractive market, and I think still has a great potential. And we know there's also discussion about Ukraine becoming a supplier of renewable energy, for example, in forms of renewable hydrogen. But that, of course, requires that investment is done in Ukraine, in particular in wind power. So, Andrei, again, thank you. Please also have a look at the chat if there are any questions coming up for you. This is not the case right now. And then I would like to go to our next speaker, and I have the pleasure to welcome Evgeny Nicolaeff here, one of our colleagues working in Russia as a also developer of a wind farm. And he's a board member of the WWA representing Russia and making sure that the Russian developments are also part of the discussions at the World Wind Energy Association. And now we look forward to hearing from you about latest developments in Russia. Evgeny.
Yes, Stefan, thank you very much. Let me greet the members of today's webinar. Thank you very much for the attention, for the opportunity to speak about our Russian development. I would say, as a whole, Russia is the energy system which really based on mainly fossil fuels energy sources. We have a bit of hydropower, and it's been we've been speaking about renewable energy like small hydro, wind, and solar for long. Totaling of our capacity of energy system is 220 gigawatts of installed capacity so far. And at one point, there was defined that there should be a fraction devoted to renewable energy. And that fraction is clearly, as a target was by 2024, to reach around 8 gigawatts of installed capacity of renewable energy in total, out of which biggest is the wind. It's around 5 gigawatt of installed capacity in total on a marketplace called wholesale market. There are two types of markets in Russia because country is pretty big. So one part is the wholesale, and the rest is unregulated area where there's off-grid solutions, which is mainly in Siberia, and below more in Asian part where 1/10, 1/15 of the whole population is living. So I would say there was a lot of optimism while tenders were arranged and the quotas for wind energy were outsold. I mean, during the period pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. In that respect, pandemic didn't affect the auction process itself, but the issue with our national economy that it's really linked towards I mean, our national currency, obviously. So that the pandemic really created a mess out of the economy due to slowing down of the economy. I think it's the biggest hit since 1990s. The government at the moment tries to cope with this, and obviously because it's a free economy, I mean, not regulated economy, let's call it like that, not only free, but so it happens so that we had significant fall of ruble, of national currency, in regard to the dollar and euro. We think we are now at the how to call this one, the national record, obviously, and just on the prices of euro and dollar. And due to the fact that wind energy is mainly linked still, even if we have production locally now, I mean, mostly that sort of production is OEM type operations. So we have an issue of still dependence on pricing of in euro and dollar, and the tenders which were held were linked towards 60 to 70 rubles per dollar, in that range, and now we are speaking about 80 to 90 rubles per euro at the moment, and kind of going up and down every day. Having said that, it probably will really affect the future development of energy portfolio in renewables due to the fact that it's our projects are pretty long term. I mean, 5 to 7 or 15 years, depending on how and where the energy projects are held. So in that respect, we probably will see some correction in that respect, but also it happens so that the current development of the economy and the reduction in consumption of by major consumers of our natural resources showed that they would need to balance the producers of carbon-based fossil fuels like gas and oil to be sold more locally, more in Russia. So we see now rising prices for those sort of products, and at one point we think that in some areas it's already happened, so that that might become as a provider of renewable energies solutions like wind and solar. It might become economic in certain areas on a wholesale market already. So this might be really a great opportunity for renewable energies and wind energy in particular, because our tenders, which have been taken earlier, a few years back, showed that due to the rise of competition, the tenders were won by wind energy projects as the most, how to say, the most affordable way of developing wind energy, the energy infrastructure in the country already. So this can be shown as a positive sign. Obviously, we will now have difficult times in planning and in constructing the new projects. The projects which have been up to now developed and were signed in, we probably this year will see the record for Russia. We are speaking about around 400 megawatts of new installed capacity this year put online, which will bring probably my country to this situation where it would be around 750 to 800 megawatt of installed capacity in total. For Russia, it's pretty big leap forward. Obviously, in comparisons to some other areas, it's not yet even early start. Yeah. Why I think the situation is pretty difficult at the moment, will be the and shows an opportunity. We as a country still need to set a target for and aim a bit higher than what we have aimed so far in regards to renewables because of the climate crisis. I clearly see as a person that more and more people became aware about this particular situation in my country due to melting of permafrost and exposure of industrial crises of diminishing infrastructure and also wildfires in Siberia. And in that respect, my country definitely need to look in more detail how to reduce the impact of using fossil fuels in the future. So on the one hand, it's already been shown that by tenders and in international practices that wind energy and solar energy, wind energy in particular, is the most inexpensive way of creating new capacities in energy. And the second part is obviously the on the other hand, it's now hit by pandemic and probably new sanctions and old sanctions, really weak economy at the point. So this we will have to balance out somehow. I also see that that the opportunity for the smaller developers like myself is developing a local community wind farms and probably the combining this co-generated gas-powered and wind energy as being the most efficient and balancing out wind energy farms to provide steady supply towards the end users in the local area and to create a kind of a local distributed generation for wind energy and solar energy maybe, and also combine this gas. That would allow to be almost competitive in most of the part of the countries, but in some areas being very interesting opportunity towards making it very economic, not only at the point but also in the long term, due to the fact that I clearly see that the capacities which was sold formerly to consumers abroad now will be pushed towards the country, and price increase in natural resources also, and like gas and coal and oil probably will balance out, because in the local market, due to the fact that currently it's been subsidized heavily, but for businesses it's already freed. So this will have a big impact on creating a new demand for accessible and affordable energy sources, which energy of wind and solar plus combined gas can provide. Thank you very much. I'm open for the questions.
Evgeny, that's a great, excellent to hear from you how you see the general situation of the Russian energy market. And of course, we all know that Russia is one of the big players on the fossil energy market, and you made reference to that as well. And also, we all are aware that, of course, there are some implications, and with the climate change and the need to tackle climate change, of course, how much Russia should be prepared to change. Hearing from you that first things are done, but a lot more has to be done. Let me mention, of course, we did a study 4 years ago with your help, or 3 years ago, with your help, analyzing what are the barriers for the wind power market. And I think this is a moment where we can also mention that we are now planning a follow-up research, which we again will do with the German Friedrich Ebert Foundation, where we will focus on what you've mentioned as an important segment of Russia, more the decentralized community-based approaches, and see how self-consumption, local supply can be supported in the Russian wind market. And of course, when we think of the geographic conditions where you have many remote places, you would think that it makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Evgeny, a lot. Just very briefly, as a final kind of answer from your or statement from your side, COVID-19, we know Russia is also heavily affected by it. Does it have any delaying or impact on the wind farm development that's taking place now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what happened with my country is that we kind of been pretty reluctant to understand that it's the size of this issue in the beginning, and even though we had a lag time, but at the end, when a lot of construction sites and the whole country stopped for a few months, it still obviously affected and had a huge impact on construction building sites for the wind energy or any other construction sites. And I could clearly see that it also will really affect hardly on the economy on a later stage, and not only at this point of time, but we will still see the implications forward down.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that seems to be the case now. Everywhere we hear there is an impact, a little bit different in different parts, but yeah. Thank you again, Evgeny. Then I'd again request you, if there are any questions, please have a look at the chat. If somebody addresses you, we can bring it up later again. And then we go now from Russia to the south to Turkey. And I have the pleasure to invite Professor Tanay Zülküuya, who is by profession a scientist, engineer, and also active in many NGOs related to the promotion of renewable energy in Turkey and beyond. And Tana, you're also one of our board members, and I have the pleasure now to invite you to speak and share with us the developments in Turkey. Tanay, can we?
Thank you very much, Stefan.
There you are. Very
I
good.
will share my presentation. Just a second. Okay. So thank you very much, Stefan, in organizing this webinar to let people know what's happening globally in wind energy development. Regarding
go to presentation
this,
mode. Tanay, just click on presentation mode.
can you?
We can see, but it's not full screen mode now.
Okay, sorry. That's what you want. That's it. Is it clear now? Yes.
Not yet. Yeah, now it's good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Now, as globally, everybody, we are also affected by the new situation. Now, we are in our houses, trying to do everything online. So this is the new condition. We need to adapt ourselves all together. But wind turbines are producing, continuing to produce, and Turkey also, we have many developments regarding all renewable energy. Now it's clear for everybody that to get rid of the problems, to make climate change mitigation, and also stopping any possible surprises like COVID-19, we need to stop burning fossil fuels in this atmosphere. Now, International Renewable Energy Agency in 20 April declared that we need to do something about transition to 100% renewable energy if we want to really handle or not again face such difficulties. 7 million people die each year from air pollution, and the people who die are okay, but the others who get the sickness due to air pollution, they need to get some medicine, and 5 or 10 years later they die again. But when you don't have medicine for something, 1 million people die in 6 months. So we, as Environmental Energy Platform of Turkey and also Eurosolar, managed to disseminate this information in the country. So it was unfortunately an argument for more being dependent on renewable energy. So now I will just try to make a very brief summary statistic report for development of wind energy in Turkey. So that's I'm one of the founders of Turkish Wind Energy Association, and Turkish Wind Energy Association is doing a good work in Turkey. And these statistics are every 6 months are published. So this is the last one published in July 2020. As you see, the cumulative installations for wind power plants in Turkey has a regular constant increase, even though we have many difficulties for the investors regarding the regulations and the existence of the natural gas take or pay agreements since years, forcing energy efficiency and renewable energy implementation to be delayed because these long-term agreements are made so that even if you don't buy the natural gas, you need to pay for it. So that's why this is a problem. But as renewable energy started to get cheaper, production of wind energy and solar energy, now natural gas power plants are in trouble in Turkey. They cannot pay their credits, so they are planning how to make a slow bankruptcy. So that this is the case. Some of them are moving to other countries, and renewable energy with this cheapest thing. We have the resource, we have the businessman who wants to invest in it, and we have some people also in the public bodies trying to support and open the obstacles, remove the obstacles in wind energy development. Of course, the auctions are becoming a common thing, but it's like national lottery tickets. Everybody thinks they will get it, but at one point, one or two companies gets it, and the others are disappointed. This happened in Turkey. We have 1,000 megawatt, 1 gigawatt auctions for wind and photovoltaics. And the other companies who didn't want the auction, they started to ask, find a solution. Now mini auctions are in the agenda. We shall see what will happen. It's also delayed because of the COVID thing. Anyway, so, but under all those conditions, we still have this constant increase of wind power plants. So now we have about 8,288 megawatt, about 8 gigawatt of wind. When we look at annual installations for wind power plants in Turkey, in 2010 it was 500 megawatt. The highest one was 2016, about 1.3 gigawatt. Then after we see a decrease. Now 2020, so far in 6 months, we had only 232 megawatt. When we look at the electricity generation of wind power plants in Turkey in 2020, January it was 2 million megawatt hours. And so in February, it reduced a little bit, but these are the seasonal changes. In January, it was about 9% of all electricity supplied from wind energy in Turkey. And in June, it is 5.63. The average is about 8.52. So 8.52% of all electricity in our country is produced from wind energy. And when we look at the investors, operational wind power plants already operating, mainly we have a few companies about more than 500 megawatt, and the others are following with difficulties. And the smallest, I mean, starts from Zorlu Energy. Many of them are local companies, as you see. And these are the percentages of how much of the wind power plants they own. And when we look at the companies who are the wind power plant turbine manufacturers, Nordex is leading in Turkey, Enercon is following, and the Vestas, then Siemens Gamesa, and General Electric. And Siemens Gamesa, Siemens is the winner of this auction. So they are preparing this 1 gigawatt wind turbine and producing locally in Turkey and supporting with a research center. and the others are not so effective in the market. And when we look at the regional wise, how is the situation? Aegean Sea is leading now, followed by Marmara, then the Mediterranean and Central Anatolia. So that's the distribution according to the Turkish regions. And when we look at the cities, Izmir, the Western Anatolia Aegean Sea is leading, followed by Balıkesir, Manisa. These are all Western Anatolia cities. Then we have Dardanelles, and then followed by East Mediterranean cities, Hatay. And even in Turkey, you see over here the cities leading with the highest potential. Then the other parts of Turkey also with a 35 to 40% capacity is also feasible for wind farm applications. That's the cities. Then when we look, let's look at the ones which are under construction. The under construction wind power plants in earlier years, every 6 months reports show that was less, and in 2015 we had 2 gigawatt capacity, followed by 1.8 gigawatt in 2016. But now we have in July 2020 2.45 gigawatt wind turbines, wind power plants are in under construction. And for these wind power plants who are under construction, these are the companies, and still it's an even distribution. These are part of the tenders, and the authority declared that they will allow companies and make a provide connection to the grid. So these are the winners of these tenders in different times. Okay, these are the investors' distribution. And the wind power plants which are under construction, General Electric is leading, Nordex following, then Vestas and Siemens. And the new wind power plants are being constructed in Marmara region mainly. Marmara region, then followed by Ege region. And when we look at the cities for the new under construction, we see more Thrace region, Istanbul, and northwestern Anatolia. That's the second big potential. And then we have licensed wind power plants. According to investors, there's a huge, very, very, very small ones also. When we look at the, again, licensed wind power plants, it's around Marmara region. And now pre-licensed wind power plants, this includes the auctions. This is 1,000 megawatt one is included. This one will be finalized later. And 22% of this pre-licensed one is the result of the auction, 1,000 megawatt, won by Siemens. And this is also Marmara region around Istanbul and Dardanelles. Okay. Now, when we look at the cities, Thrace region, European part of Turkey, is more successful. Edirne also near Greece border. Then Istanbul, Çanakkale, and Western Anatolia. Presentation, a brief introduction of the statistics of Turkish wind power development. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks so much, Tanay, for many figures here, and that is very impressive. I think that there's some interesting developments obviously going on. You also mentioned some issues with the auction system there. Now, let me just ask you for clarification. You mentioned that there's now some decrease in market volume. Is there then impact coming from auctions? Is the impact coming from the COVID-19 situation? How would you describe that? Tanay? Now you're frozen.
The only thing was this was unlicensed by the authority buying electricity from photovoltaic panels mainly, because it was 1 megawatt was the limit. So it didn't work for wind turbines. The community power, what we are defending, the ownership of the local people, smaller ones, let's say, didn't happen in Turkey. But with photovoltaics, since they are more modular, we have 7,000 megawatt. So 7,000 individual projects, individual people, I mean, normal people who have connection to the grid as a customer. Now we have 7,000 megawatt. It's real community power. Remember, I was mentioning that this unlicensed application will be the base for community power development. Yes, it happened this way. Now it's removed. Then people in photovoltaics, I'm talking about, people needs to have a certain contract capacity. And if they have this contract, they can build photovoltaic panels, which I'm doing for my house, for example. But wind, it didn't work. So unlicensed applications were delayed a little bit or stopped even. It didn't affect wind energy development. But back to MENA, not because of COVID-19, it was always delayed. If you remember, when we were working in Sarıgerme, also 1,000 companies applied for measurements. Then in the 10th month, it was delayed again. So this delaying procedure is dependent on some other factors. With COVID, I think it had positive effects also about why we need to use renewable energy. And also people learned if human activities are not destroying due to transportation, fossil fuel combustion, nature is happy, people are more healthy. And that's why it was a good show to human beings that how we should behave, why we should live in harmony with nature. So these are the positive things. For myself also, I was traveling, maybe you also traveling a lot, but now I can do everything. I can do everything from my office. I'm saying. So I just refreshed myself, as you see. So I have a time to exercise. I have a time to sleep more. So I thought I retired, but I look as if I was just born. Another maybe a few years, I will continue. So, I mean, I don't make any connections with COVID-19. And unfortunately, nobody makes this connection. We should make a connection. To get rid of COVID-19, we need to stop burning fossil fuels in this atmosphere. But now everybody is looking for a medicine and for what is this for not protecting people from the diseases. So if you find one medicine, the next week, if you don't stop the cause, we will face it again. So it must be the time to distribute this quality to everybody. And the destination is, of course, transition to 100% renewable energy. That's what we need. And European Green Deal, which is very important. European Commission decided to go in that direction, and also global transition by International Renewable Energy Agency is also showing this way. And Europe opened enough funds to support this European Green Deal. Any of our colleagues in Europe likes to cooperate with us and in a consortium. I mean, we are not planning to make any project proposals ourselves, but when you look at the European thing, with this time, I would like to ask friends to contact us, and we can be good partners to save Europe. Thank you very much.
Let's do that. Thank you. And I think indeed there's no doubt that this pandemic situation is kind of bringing us back to where we live and look more around where we are. Tana, thanks a lot for your insights.
Thank you.
And now we move more to the south. We still stay in the Mediterranean. We have now two speakers also from the Mediterranean area. At first, Khalid Ben Hamou, who will present from Morocco about Maghreb, which is not only Morocco, but also Algeria, Tunisia. Khalid, you are the managing director of Sahara Wind, a project I'm sure you will also briefly introduce yourself, that tries to harvest some of the best wind regimes in Morocco that are there around the world. And you will share with us latest developments in the Maghreb region. Khalid.
With great pleasure, Stefan. We have actually a region that is indeed fairly windy. On the western side, we got huge potential in the center, and we've got the picture that is varying between countries, and the picture is not always the same. So I'm gonna share my screen and present rather those prospects. And so I'm going to start westwards, Tunisia, westwards towards the Atlantic, ending to Mauritania, and present the perspective of different countries. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the Libyan situation because I'm not very versed into the situation in this country. If we talk about Tunisia, what is interesting is we got very high renewable energy targets that have been set already in 2017. But as far as wind is concerned, there is very limited capacity which have been rolled out to date. In fact, the country is behind on its 2020 targets, which should have been 1.68 gigawatts, and has reached only about 240 megawatts, which were already built a while ago. So besides the closing deal of the Sidi Mansour wind farm of 30 megawatts and the announcement that 120 megawatts on 4 sites have been selected, there's not much news since the last update on wind energy trends in the region. And so there is progress in PV. I believe COVID impacts have been slowing the rollout of wind energy in Tunisia. And so we expect the next few months, we expect some growth in that market. With that, I'd like to shift to the country westwards. As I had mentioned, we're moving westwards towards the Atlantic. And we've got the Algerian case, the Algerian wind energy situation, with a very, very limited capacity of 10 megawatts in a country which a recent study funded by the International Finance Corporation with the various companies, Everzone, Vortex, and also the global, the GWEC, has identified onshore wind energy potential of 7,700 gigawatts. So this is huge potential. Unfortunately, it is not tapped at all to date. And the Algeria National Program of Renewable Energy aims to reach 22 gigawatts in 2030. It has been announced, it has been initiated in 2012, has been officially announced in 2015, and it's very limited in its rollout, with wind almost absent in it. I believe this program is essentially focused on PV, but 5 gigawatts of wind are supposed to be online by 2030, of which none has been installed to date. And it's a bit disappointing because of the tremendous wind potential that Algeria has. And we expect, hopefully, stimulus packages to be able to implement those wind capacities in the region. There is obviously lots of room for Algeria to grow in the wind energy sector, and I will show you also some aspects where wind and also with European Green Deal hydrogen technologies could kick in the region. If you look at Morocco's wind energy sector, is the largest, of course, in the Maghreb region, the oldest and the more steady. Look at about 1.2 gigawatts of operational capacity, the majority of which is operational on the Sahara trade wind-blown coastline, with a variety of players. We're going to see how the industry has done with the COVID-19 crisis. Basically, there is a Midelt wind farm as part of the 850 integrated wind energy program of Morocco, which has been implemented. The team was stretched to the limit. There has been no rotation possible, but they did manage in Midelt to build the 180 megawatt wind farm to completed. It is not yet commissioned, but it is completed. And the 300 megawatt Boujdour wind farm has been, the deal has been closed. So now it's being constructed, as is first phase of the 150 megawatt Taza wind farm, of which 87 megawatts are being now constructed. So it's going to be split in two phases. Instead of the 150 megawatts in one phase, it's going to be split in two phases. We're still waiting to hear about the 30 megawatt Walidia wind farm, which is pretty much in construction. As for the rest, we'll have to wait probably until 2021 for the announcements to be made. So I think Morocco is on track for meeting about 2 gigawatts of power by end of 2022. And moving on, you got more interesting prospects that I'm happy to present. Of course, the region, Morocco has a significant wind technical potential of 6,000 gigawatts onshore that could produce 11,500 terawatt hours. This is due to the trade winds. Obviously, the trade winds are offset compared to Moroccan energy electricity load centers. So that's a challenge, the transfer from that region to the north of Morocco. And also the local contents are increasing thanks to an industrial consolidation. Siemens Gamesa has really taken the lead in that market with about 77% of market share of wind turbines, and it has set a regional hub for wind blade manufacturing, 80% dedicated to export, and there's also progress in building local towers with local steel, namely. So all that are positive signals to the industry. Now, what is more interesting here to note with the wind targets of Morocco, according to Mazen in last month, it has mentioned that the COVID crisis had actually no direct impact on the energy targets of 52% that Morocco has by 2030. In fact, these are likely to be reached by 2026. So there's new targets that are now estimated by 2030 to be at 60-65% of renewable energy capacity. And that translates into additional wind capacity of about 4 gigawatts. And it's interesting to note that this can be exceeded with the Power-to-X projects. Morocco is going to host the first not only demo project in partnership with Germany, with the German hydrogen strategy rather, because it's a multiple hydrogen application strategy. and pilots. The pilots will essentially look at how Morocco's global fertilizer industry can switch from gray ammonia imports of about 2 million tons to green ammonia. So this just shifting Morocco's imports of gray ammonia into green ammonia will translate into a capacity of about 8 gigawatts supplemental wind capacity. So this is tremendous capacity that are likely to be added probably before 2030, thanks to the German hydrogen strategy and also the European hydrogen strategy, which now consolidate partnerships in the south of the Mediterranean, namely with Morocco as the first operator and implementer of this strategy. So what is also interesting to note is that on the grid operator side, COVID-19 has presented a tremendous challenge. Obviously, there has been excess generating capacity, excess fossil fuel generating capacity. Renewables have been feeding a larger capacity in the grid, so this is good news. But the drop in electricity consumption of about 14% has shifted loads from industry towards residential use. And because of the COVID crisis, a lot of these homes have lacked incomes. So the utility has had about 11 million of outstanding electricity bills, which have not been paid. So this is gonna put a burden on the grid operator, ONEE of Morocco. And so that is why it's important that the policy signals and the regulatory environments need to be put in place to mobilize the capital and attract private sector investment also in the transmission, distribution, and grid infrastructure. And that is why Morocco has created 2-3 days ago Morocco's Strategic Management of Public Assets, an agency that will be in charge of managing strategic assets from the phosphate conglomerate to as well the utility ONEE. And we believe that this could lead to a conducive framework for an HVDC line to connect the Sahara coastline to the loads north of Morocco and enabling exchanges with Europe. And we're talking about a line that is 1,200 kilometers long, which Sahara Wind has advocated for the last 15 years. If you look at Mauritania's wind energy picture, it's also interesting that now the country has limited wind capacity, but it also a very small grid, and the challenge is to integrate wind energy in Mauritania's grid. There is a 100 megawatt Siemens Gamesa renewable energy wind farm at Boulay-Noir, close to Nouadhibou, where the export of iron ore is being made. And so the substation tests have been completed regardless, they're almost completed regardless of the COVID situation. And the line will also, the line connecting Nouadhibou with Nouakchott will be commissioned by end of 2020. So you can really see that not only will be the wind farm commissioned, but the line feeding into not only Nouakchott, but also Mauritania's connection to the ECOWAS economic zone and the grid towards Senegal and Mali. There are some grid expansions that are also planned. And the mix between the grid expansions and the future Power-to-X applications for direct reducing the iron ore into carbon emission-free steel are tremendous in the region. And I believe that this will also lead to projects which can be implemented with not only individual country strategy. We talked about Germany's hydrogen strategy. We talked also about France's 7 billion euro hydrogen strategy and Europe's hydrogen strategy. I believe these are the early movers into decarbonizing the steel industry in the world. And so I'm going to just conclude with showing you where most of the phosphate deposits are located, 72% of the world's phosphate deposits, which is actually a fossil footprint from the trade winds blowing in the region. And in red, you can see the iron ore deposits of the region, which are tremendous and that are being exported on the Atlantic coastline. And so that that shows you how actually these carbon-free processes are likely to decouple the installed capacity, the expected installed wind capacities in the region. And so the idea is really to power not only clean energy on regional basis towards North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and enabling exchanges to Europe, but also decarbonize major energy-intensive and carbon emission-intensive industries, namely the steel and the fertilizer, global fertilizer industry. And with that, I'd like to conclude my presentation. I'm, of course, open to questions.
Thanks so much, Khalid. I think that was an excellent overview of what is happening in the Maghreb countries, and also making some reference to the COVID situation and the impact that has. So what I understand from you is that actually, and we heard it also from other countries, that it rather leads to increasing the targets. On the one hand, it seems to be easier now because the electricity consumption is going down everywhere. But also, obviously, governments are changing the priorities. That is good news. That's certainly one of the conclusions we can take also from here. And there's one comment for you. I would say it's rather a comment, but I think it's good if you can react on that. From Alexandra Wagner, I think it is important. It's much more important to green degraded landscape and draw down CO2 and reduce it to black coal and keep it safe underground. No need for hydrogen. The other part, better reduce consumption, useless transport and beef, I think is not so much related to your specific presentation. That's certainly valid statements. But Khalid, you want to react on that, the role of hydrogen that you've presented?
Yes, I mean, obviously hydrogen is important in the region, not because it's a European hype or a global hype. It's essentially important because, and we have introduced the first hydrogen projects in the region a decade ago, because it is on the critical path to accessing wind energy on weak grids. And the main load in the region, in fact, are the mine processing industries, which are actually not processing much of the mine. They're just cleaning the export of raw materials because of a lack of energy to process these minerals. So hydrogen is important because if, first of all, hydrogen in the economy, 70% of that hydrogen is to produce ammonia. And one of the main customers of ammonia, of imported ammonia in the world, is Morocco. And so if you have plenty of wind and you can produce CO2-free ammonia, and if you can do that, you are reinforcing regional grids and the access to wind electricity, enabling a transfer of wind industry, facilitating also the access to electricity in a continent that lacks significant access to electricity. I believe 580 million people still do not have access to electricity in sub-Saharan Africa. So anything that is clean, anything that provides access to electricity and opens access to one of the world's cheapest wind electricity, we're talking about 2 cents per kilowatt hour, probably a little lower. The price of ammonia is also competitive with fossil fuels on that scale. So I think you are in an energy transition path that should not be either underestimated nor neglected, because this will enable countries that are 90% energy dependent on fossil fuel imports to become actually not only independent, but clean energy exporter in terms of clean fertilizer, or perhaps also green hydrogen, which can also enable both the grids in Africa and in Europe to integrate more intermittent renewable energies, and also strengthen the grids and store also renewable energies on a seasonal basis. So, and decarbonize mobility, etc. But the argument that is being made on coal is a good one, because as Morocco didn't have access, had a high dependency on fossil fuels, it opted to power its electricity with coal-fired power plants, because it's the cheapest way to produce fossil-generated electricity. And they are, of course, very polluting. And now the challenge is to make sure that these plants can be decommissioned as soon as possible and substituted by tremendous amounts of renewable electricity from solar and wind mostly, because we have 70% capacity factor of wind electricity in the south. So that will be the challenge. It will be an economic challenge because obviously those are stranded, will gradually become stranded assets in the region. But this is an economic choice that has been made when Morocco did not have access to electricity and was looking for the cheapest source of electricity, and when wind energy was still expensive. Now with the dropping cost of both wind and solar, it becomes economically justified to shift into renewable energy, and with storage and hydrogen technology to go really for 100% renewables, if not more, because then you'll be able to export green electrons and green molecules as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I think it is very good to hear your perspective, which is, of course, shows that the whole hydrogen topic is a bit more complex than sometimes the discussion, of course, is just about cars and whether to use cars and fuel cells or batteries. That is certainly where I think at the moment it's very clear the answer. Hydrogen in fuel cells is not competitive, but there are many more applications that you just highlighted in the industrial applications, etc. Long term, we have to see which role hydrogen can play in storage, etc., which I think requires, of course, different debates. And we tried to have that before. We'll have that extra. But I think, anyway, good to hear different perspectives on this. Then again, thank you.
I may, Stefan, just before we conclude, I want to mention that these hydrogen technologies are accessible because they're modular, they're on smaller scale, and they affect industries. If you take the steel industry, it's 8% of the world's total carbon emissions. So this is huge. Airplane is about 12%. So it's almost like all the aviation industry that you can shift from carbon emission to zero emission. If you look at the chemical and industry, you have about the same rate. So those are huge opportunities to eliminate carbon emission from the atmosphere, which cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I just wanted to say that sometimes the discussion is just about which role hydrogen can play in cars, and that I think is where we would not start now, but it's obvious the first steel production starts now with hydrogen, where you also use the whole, energy which is in. You have different, of course, energy efficiency rates, etc. So again, thanks a lot, Khalid. If there are additional questions, please stay with us and have a look at the chat. Now I would like to move more to the east, and I have the pleasure to invite Professor Galal Osman from Egypt. Galal, you are with us, and you have promised not only to present the current situation in your home country in Egypt, but the whole MENA region. So we had agreed before that West North African countries will be covered by Khalid, and now the rest of the MENA region will be presented by you, Galal. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Stefan. It's a pleasure to welcome all the audience of our seminar of today. My friend Khaled spoke about the Maghreb countries. I am going to talk about the MENA country on the Mashriq. Next, please. My talk will be talking about some countries on the Gulf and some countries in Africa. In Africa, we have Egypt, and in the Gulf, the main oil players will show up like Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Oman, and Bahrain, plus Jordan. MENA countries is, to brief, they are 19 countries. Khaled spoke about 5 countries in Maghreb, and I am going to touch the other 14 countries. 60% of the world oil reserves are in this region. So we are fighting with renewable, with the oil with the world oil reserves, and 45% are natural gas reserves. The plans has showed that this region would like to generate 80 gigawatt of combined renewable energy by 2030. The countries I am touched are Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Oman, UAE, United Arab Emirates, Yemen, Bahrain, Sudan, Kuwait, and Djibouti. So this is the plan by IRENA for MENA resources. Maghreb has been touched by my brother and friend Khalid Ben Hamou for Algeria, Tunisia, Mauritania, and Morocco. Now the present situation is 6 gigawatt in this region, and we don't forget that this is oil countries and with a strong solar radiation and with shortage of water and importing for their food. So this is the priority for this region. Africa and Middle East, about 1 giga of wind capacity. Market expected to grow by 10.7 giga installed till 2024, an increase of 167% from the current market situation. Next. The quick development expected to be spurred. The pioneers in the continent is Morocco, and then Saudi Arabia is coming with 1.8 giga installations in Egypt and 3.3 gigawatt installation in South Africa, which is another champion on the south in the continent, where I consider Africa has the champions on the west, Morocco, and in the south by South Africa, not only in wind, but in solar applications. Next. Let us have an analysis for, as per 2019, country in the region wind power capacity shows that what are the plans according to statistics. Egypt is going to generate 262 megawatt, Morocco 216, Jordan 190 megawatt, and then Ethiopia was 120 megawatt. This is the breakdown. Egypt energy mix have different items. Our friends in Uganda spoke about hydro and geothermal. Situation in Egypt also, we have the Nile, and then we have hydro and wind and PV, and the plans to go for CSCP. We have abundance of solar, longer solar radiation, plus desert, and shortage again of water and food. Plus shortage of water is going to make desalination. What is the landscape of wind planned in Egypt 2023? Now there is no more also on the Gulf of Suez or Jabal Zayt. There is also planned to be western side of the River Nile, like the lowest two, West Nile 1 and West Nile. And the other wind farms will be in Jabal Zayt, where are the wind mines, and the Gulf of Suez. And this is on the western side of the Mediterranean. On the eastern side, you find the Saudi Arabia wind farms. The plans is about 200, 2050, 200, 2000 mega is expected under development, EPC by Siemens. And then we have the consortium who is being get a Vestas plan. And this is Japan, JICA, and EPC, Italgen, and then Spain, and then BOO, and other companies. So there are different players on the region. The last contract has been installed 262.5 megawatt wind energy farm in Ras Gharib. This wind energy, to Eros Energy Holding and Orascom Construction in Ras Gharib on the Gulf of Suez. This one of the last wind farm. And then RIA and with an Italian, French, Chilean. So you find that the investors having European and the South American alliance, and this is led by the Danish turbine makers Vestas, have signed an agreement to realize 250 megawatt wind project in the Gulf of Suez, and Egypt to connect and build this wind farm within 35 months. Now we go to the Gulf, Oman, where it is an oil country. They have a plan, $1.1 billion wind power projects planned in Oman. First utility scale wind power project, where the scale capacity of 300 megawatt expected to come by 2023, according to Oman Power and Water Procurement Company. And the companies are always busy with electricity and water, and even the ministry. There's not in many other utilities. Utilities here have combination of water and electricity. Dhofar wind farm, 50 megawatt by GE, renewables by project, 3.8 mega wind turbine, one of the largest size in the region, while TSK is responsible for remainder of the wind farm infrastructure and the electrical transmission facilities connecting the plant to the grid. This is another 50 megawatt in Oman, where oil countries now they are shifting to renewable. And in spite of the drop of oil prices and the terrible air conditioning loads and shortage of water, they are now moving to renewable. And when I mean renewable, I mean both solar and wind. There is a plan also in the Gulf of Oman to go for offshore wind energy option in Beacon of Oman, harnessing offshore wind via the installation of wind turbines for offshore, highlighted in by ocean economy, and they are considering to go by the first Arab offshore wind farm. This was planned by the Omani government of the late Sultan Qaboos. Next. Now we go to the oil company Saudi Arabia, and of course after COVID-19, there was no Hajj to Mecca, and there are no tourists coming to the Red Sea and so on. There is already measures to slow the economy in the region, in addition to the drop of oil prices. But according to the Middle East Wind Power Market Report, developers will build 6.2 gigawatt of wind capacity, or 46% of the region total wind capacity addition between 19 and 28. And as per the last webinar, capacity building is started with 20 or 30 research centers. So they are working in parallel with the plan to have wind farms in the region. Next. This is a project with ADF and Masdar from Emirates, Dumat Al Jandal wind project. Consortium has been awarded $500 million power project in Saudi Arabia, and this is a 400 megawatt wind farm. The Saudi capital is in the middle, and then there are plans for Al Ghof wind farm. And this is very strange on the oil reserves and natural gas reserves. Now they are shifting to solar PV and CSV plus wind farms. So this is the first wind farm and will be located 150 miles from Riyadh. Next. Then we come to Jordan with shortage of energy and water, and Palestine nearby. This is ranked the third after Egypt and Morocco in MENA region. The pioneer might be Morocco, and then following Egypt, and then Jordan is the third for energy production. This is Tafila wind farm, and I visited Tafila wind farm shortly with Triple M Company and Tafila University. and they are working to develop 51.57 megawatt wind power project. And the Egyptian construction company like 3M are working in this site, located 140 kilometers southwest of Amman. So they are making use of the manpower of wind industry in the region. This near Aqaba. And then back to Emirates, one also of the richest countries and oil producing companies in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. There is an island called Serbaniyas wind farm project. Construction of wind farm to be located on the island of Serbaniyas, a small remote island belonging to the Emirates of Abu Dhabi. Total installed capacity will be 28.8 megawatt, 16 wind turbine, with each of them having 1.8 megawatt. So when the industry is also entering UAE in the island of Serbaniyas. Next. We know the Emirates, there are 7 Emirates. We go to another Emirate, Al Fujairah. Renewable energy project includes setting up 4 wind farms on the north of Fujairah and another one in Masafi, one of the Fujairah city, and the last one in the south of Emirates. Spanish company expects that Fujairah generate 130 to 200 megawatts of electricity per year with the wind farm. Each have around 5 towers that will generate more than 50 megawatt. And then another oil company, Bahrain, this is called, all of them is a council of Gulf states. So they are getting one after one to play with renewable energy. So Bahrain having first one is PV for 120 mega, and then CSP, and then photovoltaic rooftop, and then follows with wind energy, and at the end, biomass and waste. So this is an energy mix for Bahrain. Plus, they are planning to get for hybrid power plant, hybrid wind and solar by, again, electricity and water authority. They go hand in hand. 12 hectares in southern of Bahrain, 17 million Bahraini dollar, and the plant is a small one, but 3 megawatt of solar and 2 megawatt of wind energy. So they are trying to play with the hybridization of power plants, wind plus solar together. This is for Bahrain, and this is my reference. And I thank you for the tour with me around the Arabian Gulf and north of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Galal. That was a very broad presentation and really showing us what is happening in the region. And I think it is really encouraging to see that now all the states, all the governments, even of the oil-rich countries, are now looking into wind energy to invest. Although, of course, some of those targets are still quite modest, but anyway, just 5-10 years ago, that would have been, nobody would have spoken about that. And in particular, seeing like how Saudi Arabia is really looking into wind and solar on a very, very large scale. Gala, just a brief question. I know that you're personally affected by the corona pandemic situation. And of course, it's impossible to answer that related to all the countries that you brought up. But how would you see the impact of the pandemic on wind development in the region?
COVID-19 pandemic is having the effect of economical effect and losing of jobs, because many tourist places has been empty. Plus, many of the workers who are producing petrodollar in the Gulf are also has been lost their jobs. So COVID-19 is offering hard time to the region for the jobs and for industry. And all our students, millions, are in home using online learning. So it is strange effect is happening, and we are looking to recover so that the economy can run again and the people can get jobs, because I have seen many families has been terribly hit by COVID-19. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. So you would rather see a very broad impact on the societies.
Yeah.
In the region.
Paralysis.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for that insight. So, yeah, I think you would let me now launch our second poll, which is about the future, how you assess the future of wind energy in your country, in your region for the coming year, in your region and also globally. So you can make a difference how you see the situation, specifically where you are situated or where you are located, and how you see the global development after also listening now to our speakers. So while you, and please take part in our brief survey, while you do that, I'd like to introduce our next presentation. And it seems that our friend from Switzerland hasn't managed to come back on time so that he can present it by himself the development in Switzerland. But the nice coincidence is we have a Swiss citizen here with us, my colleague Jean-Daniel Pitelou. Actually, you have also background in Venezuela, but you're a Swiss citizen as well. And so you're the best person now to present us the situation in Switzerland. The presentation which was prepared by the Swiss Wind Energy Association. So it's really first-hand information. Now, briefly having a look at the results of our poll. We see here there is rather a positive expectation for wind power development in the coming year. And that is both internationally, but also in your home countries. I think that is a good outcome, and I think that is also in line with what we heard from the speakers today, but also 1 week ago. And with this, I would request Jean to present Switzerland.
Yes, thank you, Stefan, and thank you to our colleague Lionel Perret from the Swiss Wind Energy Association for sending us the slides for today's webinar. So I'm not an expert on the Swiss, although I'm Swiss, I'm not an expert on the Swiss market, but I can at least show you some of the figures, some of the status of the Swiss market. So in Switzerland, by the end of 2019, there were 75 megawatts installed, with a production of 146 gigawatt hours in 2019. Although being one of the smallest countries in Europe, there are 1.2 gigawatts of wind projects in planning currently. 5 of these 5 projects are at the moment waiting for the final court decision. And the long-term goal of the Swiss industry, of the Swiss wind energy sector, is to have 4,000 gigawatt hours. That means around 7% of the whole electricity share. So in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic effect on the Swiss market, as similar to other countries as we hear already, like Italy, for example, and in many countries in the world, the delay is mainly on the approval process of these wind projects. So there are new dates for both. There's some delays on how these are approved by the judges, and also in terms of regional energy plans, also there are some delays. Also, those who are opposing these wind projects are asking for more delays because of the pandemic. So, but good news is that at least one of these projects that was under construction when the pandemic started is the wind park Gotthard. Is very high on the Alps, Swiss Alps, very high altitude. So it's 5 turbines in total, 11.75 megawatts. is, as I mentioned already, is over 2,000 meter high in the Alps. And actually today, one of the main reason why our colleague from the Swiss Wind Energy Association is not here in the webinar is because right now is the inauguration of this wind project. And as you can see in the picture, it's very far away in the Alps, so the internet connection is very difficult and must be also very cold at the moment there. But fortunately, there was no delay on the construction of this project, so they could finish on time. So another activity during the pandemic, of course, we all had the opportunity to meet in these kind of events online. So there is a wind research and development organization in Switzerland that kind of conglomerate all the companies who are working on wind in Switzerland. And there was an opportunity to meet on September 16 to discuss most of the most important topics that are concerning the wind industry at the moment. I had the opportunity to take part on that event myself. So there were a lot of discussion about mainly about data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. So there were a lot of discussion about how can the Swiss industry or the Swiss developers share more data that can improve many of the, not only in terms of technology, but on the market side also, electricity market. So it was mainly about data, I would say, that event. But if you want to know more, of course, you can visit the website there in the slide, vedowind.ch. You can actually join that group, take part on the discussion. So I will invite you to take part on that. So another study about the CO2 impact of wind in Switzerland. You can hear some information about this project. So if you have any question, you can ask us in the chat or send us an email, and we will forward this to our colleague from Switzerland. But you can see here that it has a strong argument, this study, about the impact of the wind projects in the CO2 levels, especially during the winter in Switzerland. So if you, as I mentioned already, if you want more information about this or about Switzerland, we will be happy to forward your questions to our Swiss colleague, and I hope he will join us in the future meetings, and he will also show some pictures about these wind projects in the Alps. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jean-Daniel. That I think was also good to see how a small market is developing. And I think it is a reason for all of us to celebrate, to have such probably one of the wind farms on highest altitude, more than 2,000 meters, that's inaugurated. Switzerland, not a big market, but of course, they have already a lot of, a quite big share of hydropower. So in general, a high share of renewable power in their grid, in the national electricity supply. Well, we are coming to the end of our webinar. Now, I would like to ask, I know that we have also, but maybe he has left us in the meantime, Morten Pedersen, you're not with us here anymore. Yeah, that seems not the case, because I thought he was also about to make some remarks from Denmark. Then I would request Peter Ray. Peter, we're happy to have you here as well. Peter joining us from Australia as our president of the World Wind Energy Association. Then I would request you to make some concluding statements of this webinar on wind power in Europe, MENA, and Africa.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Stefan, for the webinar, which you've managed again very well. We are now part of the way through the total series of webinars in relation to what's happening in the world of wind energy. And it's becoming more and more obvious as we get reports from a number of the smaller countries, which we don't often hear about, that the transfer to wind energy is taking place at a rate which is most encouraging for those of us who want to see the world powered by renewable energy sources, and in particular through the use of wind. I like to thank the various speakers this evening, and Jean for dealing with the Swiss figures and report. The webinars will be summed up to give an aggregate of what's happening in the world, and with regard to the transfer to renewables and to wind in particular. And I look forward to seeing that when we get the final results. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation. It's been quite a long session, but I think it's been a very useful session. And in conclusion, again, thank you very much, Stefan, for managing it.
Thanks so much, Peter, also for staying up late with us, because we have now, if I'm right, 9 hours time difference. That means it's now coming, you're close to midnight in Tasmania. Yeah, then with this, I would also conclude the meeting, not without mentioning.
I would like to interrupt just for a moment. Following on the webinar, which dealt with Australia and Asia, I did a recheck of some of the figures in Australia for the planned as well as the developed wind. And I must say that I'm extremely encouraged by it, notwithstanding the fact that the government is not pushing wind in particular, but rather a blend of energy sources. Wind is going ahead along with solar at a very rapid rate. And so I did want to just mention that because it's an add-on to what was discussed a few nights ago. Thank you very much, Stefan. Sorry to interrupt you.
Well, thank you, Peter. And I think that's an important statement. In particular, Australia is really kind of the leader in the people of Australia and the enterprises of Australia are world leaders in making it happen, even without much political support. And the next webinar, which we're now planning for the 28th of October, will deal with the Americas. And I'm sure that we will have similar stories, for example, from the United States of America, where some people may believe that not so much is happening because of the federal government, but maybe reality looks different. So I would like to say goodbye for now and hope to see you next time, 28th of October, with the third and final part of our half-year review, with half-year review, the status of wind power in the Americas. Thanks a lot to all the speakers. Thanks a lot to the panelists, and also for everybody who was involved in the discussion, for everybody listening here. Again, as usual, we will make the presentations available online. We will inform you, and I think already now you'll be able to watch the online stream on YouTube, where it is on without cutting it, but all the presentations will be individually accessible. Thank you. Have a good night. Have a nice day wherever you are, and stay safe, stay healthy. Goodbye.